All right, so what we're going to talk about in this chat is that we're going to talk about the COVID-19 grants, but we're more specified on the New South Wales grants because the New South Wales grants are being released currently. There might be a Melbourne one that's going to be released. There might be a Queensland one, but right now, as of today's date, there hasn't been much movement because those cities haven't been really that locked down. Melbourne obviously just got recently locked down, but Sydney's been locked down for the last 3 weeks. And so there's actually about 4 new COVID grants that are coming out. So a lot of people are confusing themselves. They think there's only one. There's actually 4 different types of grants that are coming out for New South Wales. So I'm going to go through all 4 of them. And also I'm going to go through the different types of assistance that business owners can be receiving as well, or different types of individuals can receive as well. And then I also want to go through the things you need to do in order to get yourself ready for these grants. So I understand that all those Sydney businesses that are out there that have been locked down for the last 3 weeks, it's been very tough. Like we're still paying for rent, we're still paying for employees, we've stood down employees, and we don't know the answer of what we need to do. So I can't answer all those questions, but what I can do is get you guys ready. So when the grants get released, you guys can apply straight away as quick as possible. And there's nothing missing. So you don't have to go back and forth and trying to fix things. So you can get the grant as soon as possible. I want to just make it as easy as possible for you guys. So, and get you guys ready. So let's start off with the COVID-19 business grant that's being announced. This one was announced about two weeks ago. But then it got released last week. Like it got talked about last week. They got announced it last week. And this one is not to be confused with the current one that was released this week. So the COVID-19 business grant is actually a New South Wales grant that's a one-off payment. So it's a one-off payment, and that one-off payment is from $7,500 to $15,000. So it's a business grant for only New South Wales businesses. So if you're located in New South Wales, you can apply for this grant. This grant will be open from the 19th of July. So this is with Service New South Wales. I'll put a link in our COVID response resources page on our website, but it's a one-off payment. So don't confuse it to being an ongoing a weekly or fortnightly payment. It's only one-off. And the eligibility requirements is that you need to show a 30% drop in income. So what does that mean? A lot of people are saying, you know, what happens if I started a business a while back, just this year, or what happens if I started in 2020? Am I applicable? The answer is no one knows. Even Service New South Wales doesn't know right now. But once the application gets released on the 19th of July, we're going to find out. And I'll be trying to be one of the first to let you guys know. But I know for sure that it's a 2-week turnover drop. So you just need to prove that you've had a 30% drop in turnover from 2019 versus 2021. If you've started your business between 2020 to 2021, I still want you to reconcile and get your books up to date and check if there is a drop in turnover. Because in the previous grant that was applicable for New South Wales last year, when it came to like, you know, a $10,000 grant, they said that it also applied for new businesses that have been running. But you just need to compare it to a comparable period that wasn't last year, but maybe a few months before if you started your business later instead of in 2019. So the annual turnover for this one, however, has to be over 75K. So for those businesses that aren't GST registered, sole traders, and that aren't earning any income above 75K, then you can't apply, unfortunately, in this case. But there is other ones that you can apply for. So it's not all doom and gloom in your situation. There are grants for you if you are either a sole trader that's under 75K or just a business that just started and it's under 75K. And then your payroll, you have to have payroll in this case here, but sole traders are also included. So if you're a sole trader or if you have payroll, that are the eligibility requirements for you. So I am going to get questions that are going to be asked is, oh, well, how do I prove this? Like, because this is actually governed by New South Wales, Service New South Wales, not the federal government. So how does New South Wales even know that you got employees, and how does New South Wales know that you're a sole trader or you're running a business that turns over 75K? The answer is they don't know. And what they normally do, the Service New South Wales, is they usually request from your accountant to get an accountant's letter to verify that these figures. So they verify that you're a business, you've had a decline in income, and they verify that your turnover is over 75K. So with this application, make sure that if you don't have an accountant that is good, speak to a good one. But if you're working with me, then just let me know, shoot me an email, and just let me know that you want to apply for these grants. I've got a whole list already of clients that I'm going to be applying for. More than likely, we have to produce a letter for you, most likely. So, and that's the only way that the Service New South Wales is going to be able to know that you meet these requirements. Because to be honest, they don't have that data. The federal government does not release that information to New South Wales government. So the only way that they're going to know is they're going to rely on the accountant to provide that information. We just have to do a letter. So most accountants will charge for that fee. So just be ready for it. Depending if I like you, I might charge you a bit cheaper. No, I'm just joking. So that's the COVID business grant, and it's a one-off payment. So from $7,500 to $15,000. It's a good amount, and this is to cover the last 3 weeks that we've been in lockdown. So obviously not everyone's going to be able to get that type of grant because one, you have to be over 75K. Two, you might have to compare to 2019, a 30% drop. And three, that you might not have the requirement, you might not have payroll in that case. So there is one that's called Job Saver. This one here is not a one-off payment. This is actually a weekly payment to the business owner. So the one before is also a payment to business owner. This is so by business owner, I mean the business. And this one here is a weekly one from $1,500 payment to $10,000 per week. The catch on this one is that you have to be, again, over 75K to $50 million. And you have to have a revenue decline of 30%. And also on top of that, if you're a employing business, you get about 1K per week rather than 1,500. Still good. To be honest, this is actually better than JobKeeper. JobKeeper was 1,500 per fortnight. However, this one is 1,500 to $10,000 per week. So there is this catch sheet that says employing businesses 40% of weekly payroll. So what does that mean? Basically, it means that if your payroll is $10,000 a week, which all your employees per week you pay about $10,000. That means that they will give you about $4,000, 40% of that 10,000. So that's why the catch is that they'll give you 1,500 minimum. But if you have $100,000 per week in wages, then there's no way that they're going to give you more than $10,000. It caps at $10,000 per week. So for some businesses, it's great. Some businesses it isn't as great. Going back to that 7,000, 15,000. Some clients might be asking, how do I get 7,500 and how do I get the $15,000? So this is the one-off grant. That one depends on how big your turnover drop is. So if you dropped over just 30%, then you get 7,500. If you dropped over 70%, so you lost basically most of your income, then you get the 15K. I'm not sure if anyone's asked that. So let me just quickly go over. Sean looks like he's answering some of the questions. David would answer that. So is the turnover June 1st of July? Yeah. So is it on cash or of course? Last year when we did the New South Wales COVID-19 business grant and everyone got $10,000, they didn't care too much if it was cash or accruals. They just cared that there was a drop of turnover for 2 weeks. So we just needed to prove the 2-week drop in turnover. And that 2-week drop starts from the 29th of June, 2021, all the way to the end of the lockdown. So right now, the lockdown happened, I believe, about 29th of June. So the Service New South Wales basically stated that you just need to compare a period in the lockdown period versus 2019. So just so you know, Sandy, it's not 2020 that you're comparing to, it's actually 2019. So you had to be in business at that time. However, if you haven't been in business, I don't think it's like all over. I feel like there is going to be a situation where they would allow for leniency, but I recommend that you just apply anyway. So if you haven't opened up your business during 2019 and there is a drop and you can prove that there is a drop, you should apply. It may take longer for the money to come or it may not come, but there's talk about it. There was a guy, accountant that called and spent 2 hours on the phone call with Service New South Wales. And the answer was, we don't know, but you should apply anyway. And if you get the money, you get the money. That's what they basically said. So Lena also asked the question, as in less than 6 months, can your annual projections base? Yeah, so right now we can't really confirm about if your business has only been open for 6 months old. But my recommendation is that you get everything ready and you apply anyway. And Service New South Wales to do their checks, your payment might take a bit longer for it to come, unfortunately, but they will do the checks. And if they make some leniency, the more people that apply, the more that are going through tough times and they can see the numbers, they probably would release that money. I don't see why they didn't, because they did it last year when there was a $10,000 grant. So I don't see why they wouldn't do it this year as well, unless they run out of money. So William also asked, weekly payroll costs included on costs, super work comp. No, though it's just weekly payroll, so the gross payroll. They don't include the superannuation or stuff like that. Cool. And then Maggie's asked, are both comparing 2019? Yes, both of them are comparing 2019. So right now the rule is that it's a comparison to 2019. So check your numbers on 2019 and see what your turnover is and do a comparison to see that you're going to be applicable or not. So there is cases where some businesses have seen a massive growth in income. It's been tough for those ones because, like, for example, you might have had 1 employee in 2019, but now you have 10 employees, which is kind of similar to what's happening with my business. Right now, I don't know the answer towards that. And that's going to be one that I am going to be looking at in close detail, because that is a similar situation that's happening with my business, where we've grown to about 10 employees now, or 10 including contractors. And, back in 2019, I didn't have that many employees at all. So, and now as a bigger business, your turnover is higher. But Jason, from experience and from last year, you weren't applicable, and I don't think New South Wales will make that change. The Service New South Wales will make a change for this year. Last year, we weren't applicable for that 10K grant because of that reason. Okay, so business with no employees should apply for the business grant or JobSaver. Okay, I'll answer that question later. So new businesses are still eligible for. Yes, new businesses apply anyway. That's what that's what the Service New South Wales is saying. So I'm gonna just move forward. It's 21 compared to 2019. That's weird, guys? And then the reason being is because 2020 we were also on a lockdown. So that's why they saying compare it to 2019, which I know it sounds a bit ridiculous, but it is what it is. Like it's so weird how we're comparing to 2 years ago, and 2 years ago was so long ago. Yes, there were alternative tests for JobKeeper, but don't forget, JobKeeper was with the federal government, and New South Wales government versus the federal government, they're completely two different governments. So they do things a bit different. Yes, you can apply for both, Richard. If you have 2 businesses, you can apply for each business. Cool. So I'm trying to answer all of them as I go, and I know that I don't want to go over time because there's so many things. So I'm just going to keep moving forward. So this one here, if you're a non-employing business, but you meet the requirement of being over 75K, you apply for this one. You apply for it. And if you meet the one-off payment one too, which is 7,500 to 15,000, you apply for that one as well. So you can get both. There's no argument that states that you can't get both of them right now. So I don't know if they're changing anything later on down the track, but they have not said anything yet. So just apply for both and try to get for both if you meet those requirements. And then there is this one here, COVID-19 micro business grant. So I have some clients, the hairdressers, the beauticians, a few other businesses out there that are quite micro, like, for the mums out there, especially all the dads that are working part-time and, taking care of their kids, they don't turn over 75K and they've been missed out completely. So this one here, the 30K to 75K, is designed to keep you, to pay you some money to keep you around. So this one here is 1,500 per fortnight. Unfortunately, it's smaller than the one that I just released to you, the JobSaver one. The JobSaver one is 1,500 per week, or $1,000 per week for non-employing businesses, but you have to be over 75K. This one here, if you're a micro business between 30K to 75K, you can still apply for this one, but unfortunately it's a bit lower, but it's still good. Like this one here is as good as JobKeeper when you think about it. So 1,500 per fortnight. The eligibility requirements is similar, 30% drop in income, and you have to be the income has to be for the primary income source. So meaning that the person that's actually generating this income is the one that receives the money. That's what they basically say. So the applications open in late July. Same goes with this one here. This one is late July. The only one that's opening up earlier, which is next week, is the one-off payment one. Cool. So that's the New South Wales COVID-19 business grant. That's the JobSaver one, and that's the micro business grant. So just not to confuse you guys again, but the first one is one-off. The second and third one are ongoing. And when does it end? That might be a question that might be asked. It ends when the lockdown ends. So it's not going to go for 6 months, unfortunately. So don't go spending all your money. I do have some clients that went and spent all their JobKeeper money on useless stuff. Don't spend on useless stuff this time, because this one ends straight away after lockdown. Cool. So tenants in commercial or retail premises. So I wanted to talk a bit about this as well. So if you're currently a tenant and you're renting, or you're a landlord, it's really important that you know what your rights are and what's going to happen next. So with this one here, they've started to launch this again, where they say that if you don't pay your rent, back then, if you don't pay your rent at a certain period of time, you can get evicted and your landlord can just lock you out. They've launched this again to say that we're going to protect you. So they basically said that if you can't afford your rent and you don't pay it, whether you're in commercial or whether you're currently living at home, you're protected. So they can't just kick you out. So they have to go through mediation process, and mediation takes a bit of time. So just know your rights, that if you're turning over under $50 million, the rule is that you have to be turning under $50 million, and the tenant must be eligible for New South Wales COVID-19 grants. So as long as you're eligible for any of these grants that I just listed before, you can basically, I'm not telling you guys to do this, but your landlord can't kick you out. They have to go through mediation first. So look, have a chat to them. It's always important to communicate and just let them know, hey, I can't afford my rent right now. I've been locked down. Let's work something out. Is there a possibility if we can, discount our rent or do something about it, because we can't afford to pay for this rent? It's important to keep your cash flow as much as possible, because one of the requirements, which is the weekly payments, the 2 weekly payments, the micro business and the JobSaver, requires you to retain all your employees. So yes, you're getting the grant into your business, but you're supposed to keep all the employees. You can't just fire all of them and apply for the grant. It's not possible. Yeah, cool. So JobSaver opened in late July. Does the government back pay for the whole period of the lockdown? There was a bit of talk about back paying. Right now, there's no confirmed answer, but I did hear something about there was a back pay of the certain amount, but I can't confirm for sure because they haven't released the application and explained more into it. But even if there isn't, it's okay, because if you're eligible for the JobSaver payment, you're more than likely going to be eligible for the first one, which is a one-off payment. So that one-off payment will cover for the back pay. And what is the month we go into lockdown again? We went into lockdown on the 29th of June in Sydney. What if in the month we go into lockdown again, does the grants? Oh, yeah, it's hard to say, Maggie. Oh, sorry, I read your question wrong. So Maggie asked what happens if we go into lockdown again? It's hard to answer. I don't know what would happen. We'll ask Gladius, but hopefully she doesn't go, getting us to do tests every 3 days because that's just bloody ridiculous. But anyway, so going back to this, landlords. Okay, let's talk a bit about landlords because we don't want to exclude them out. But if you should encourage your landlords to think about this. So if you have any clients that are friends that are landlords, or your landlord is breathing down your neck, then you let them know that they get concessions. So they got concessions, and we're trying to, New South Wales government is trying to encourage them to give you guys discounts. So if you give discounts, if they give you discounts, they're entitled to concessions. So first they entitled to a land tax concession, which depends on how much they reduce your payment to. So if they reduce your rent, then they can go into land tax and reduce their land tax bill. So let's just say they give you $10,000 off. The OSR, the Office of State Revenue, will give them that money off as well on their land tax bill. So it's actually in their favor to give them a reduction in rent, because that will allow them to keep you there. So that's great. And it also allows them to get the money off. So they're not losing any money. For all tenants or just one tenant? No, and so it's just how much discount they're giving would come off the land tax bill, basically. So, you know, if they're giving one tenant $5,000 off, and that tenant, they can claim $5,000 off their land tax bill. Yeah, cool. So there's also, so that one there was commercial properties. I didn't actually talk about residential. So residential properties, there's also some sort of grant, which basically, they can't do the whole land tax thing because sometimes some residentials don't have land tax. So instead, they get offering a concession where they'll give you $1,500 grant to their tenants. So to the landlord to be passed down to the tenant. So I'll give you a one-off $1,500 grant. Unfortunately, this is just one-off, so it's a bit kind of ridiculous. But tenants, yeah, it's just $1,500, unfortunately. But it does help, like it's supposed to help with it. And also you can get a concession for land tax if there is land tax on your on the residential property. So if your landlord is charging you quite a fair bit and you've lost your job and you've showed a 25% of income drop, this is for you personally. When you're renting personally, you can tell the landlord that they can get $1,500 as long as they offer you a discount or reduce their rent. The unfortunate thing about this is not all landlords have land tax, especially when it's an apartment. Let me just answer a question that William has asked, which is JobSave opened late July. By that time, we're already back out of lockdown. Then how further do you think that will give us to claim this 40%? So it usually goes for a couple months, just so you know. But it's based on the data while you're on lockdown. Does that make sense? So if the application process can be like a few months, 2 to 3 months. So you can apply during that time, but the data that you have to show the 30% drop is during the time of the lockdown period. The 40% that you're suggesting, William, don't forget, it's not the drop of 40%. It's actually 40% of your wages like that you can claim. Yeah. So then how long further do you think that will give us to claim 40%? Yeah, so basically you can claim it for the whole duration of the lockdown. So you probably will get back paid for that. Yeah. Cool. All right. So let's go to accommodation providers. So the guys out there that have Airbnbs, there are some clients that we have that own an Airbnb, or if you have a friend that owns an Airbnb, what happened is we literally canceled all our accommodations because obviously you're locked down, you can't go over to Perisher and Thredbo. Very sad, but yeah, that sucks. But what happened is that they're actually providing assistance for you guys as well, for the ones that have Airbnb businesses or renting currently. So the grant is that if during the period of the lockdown, if you've had any canceled accommodation and you do rent through Airbnb or short-term renting, you are not the people that are renting, but the people that are landlords or the ones that run a business through Airbnb, they entitled to $2,000 for up to 10 nights that have been cancelled, or $5,000 up to 11 or more. So if you have any friends that run those type of businesses and rent on Airbnb, then yeah, they're entitled to this grant as well. And it's best that they apply through Service New South Wales. So all these grants here that I've mentioned are all Service New South Wales. So like I said before, if you're not based in New South Wales, you can't apply, unfortunately. But there will be grants coming in. You have to show evidence in this case, and you have to prove that there was a drop in rooms lost during that period, 25th to July to 11th of July. But that is going to be extended, 100% it will. Yeah. So I've just talked about all the different grants that you can receive as New South Wales, but then there are some people that aren't based in New South Wales, or there might be some businesses that don't run businesses or not entitled to them because they don't make enough. You can still apply for the COVID-19 disaster payment. So this COVID-19 disaster payment is a weekly pay as well. It's a lot more lower than the ones that I just listed because the other ones are businesses. This one here are for individuals. So this isn't governed by Service New South Wales or OSR. It's actually governed by Service Australia, or also known as Centrelink. So it's for the individuals that lost their jobs or have a drop in income or lost in hours. So if you have any employees or contractors that don't meet those requirements and you can't pay them and you had to stand it down or terminate their contract, then you can offer them like, hey guys, like you should look at Centrelink or Service Australia to apply for a $600 or $375 per week payment. The unfortunate thing about this is you have to go through the whole Centrelink application. Some people are really against it, but it's money. And those people are not going to be receiving that money, and they need to pay for rent, and this is quite useful for them. So as long as they've dropped over 20 hours a week, they can apply for $600. If they've dropped 8 to 20 hours, they can get $375 per week. So it's actually quite good. I think it's really useful if you can work in conjunction with it and say, hey, maybe apply for this one, get $375, and we'll pay you some hours to work from home. So the eligibility requirement is that you have to be an Australian resident, Australian citizen, or a working visa. So some working visa are entitled to it too. So some special ones. You have to check on the Centrelink website to check which ones are applicable, but not all of them are. So if you've got some people that weren't born in Australia, but on a working visa, they can probably apply as well. So the catch is that you can't be receiving any other type of Centrelink payment, and you live in or work in a COVID-19 hotspot, and you've lost your income as opposed to the 20 hours or 8 to 20. And applications open from 15th July to and 18th of July. So why do I say 15th and 18th? Is because they've releasing it over time. I think Sydney first is like the full Sydney region is getting, Sydney is getting released 15th July, and then Greater Sydney is getting released at 18th July, I believe. Yep. So there are some, oh no, that's just Sean asking questions. Tourism and commerce, let's just look at. So I'm reading William Quinn's question. Oh no, it looks like Sean's already answered that. What about if I have employees who have student visas? Can I still apply for a JobSaver for them? Shouldn't be, as long as they're on your payroll, you can apply for JobSaver, as long as you're on the payroll, yeah. So there is no requirement that, like, they don't talk about like, what type of employees they are. As long as they're, being paid the wages, you can apply for it. If you have a micro business but have employees, then you can't combine the payroll of all your employees, just the primary income source. If you have a micro business, you only can just get the micro business payment, and because you're under 75K. So you can't apply for JobSaver, you can't apply for the one-off grant of 7,500 to 15K, unfortunately, yeah. So you only can get the micro business one. Cool. And then let's see, are there any grants taxable or tax-free? Yeah, that's a good question, actually. So initially, the Service New South Wales ones are being treated as, I have to get back to you guys, Charles. That's actually a really good question. But initially, there were some that were tax-free, but I need to confirm, and I'll put it onto the website because I don't want to give you guys a wrong number. So just assume it's taxable for now until I say otherwise. But that's a good question. Like, are any of these grants going to be taxable when you do your tax return? Do you have to include in your tax return? So there's a bit of changes in that one always constantly. So I don't know 100%, but I'll get back to you guys on that. Cool. All right. I've done that one. I've done the accommodation. Okay, things you need to know. So I think I am doing good with time. Yes. So things you need to know. So what I want to mention to you guys is that I want to make it as quick as possible that you guys can get the money in your bank account. So if that's the case, then firstly, go get yourself a Service New South Wales profile for your business. So you need to make sure that you've got one personally and you've got one for the business. If you don't have one, it's going to just take time. You know what? More than likely, there might be a crash in Service New South Wales when these registrations open. Why do I think that? Because nothing works with the government. So ATO crashed in JobKeeper time. So Service New South Wales is probably going to crash as well. And if it does crash, then we got to make sure that we at least have all these ready. So when you do apply, you skip the queue of setting up your Service New South Wales profile. What you also need to do is make sure that your bookkeeping is up to date. So what I mean by that is if you have an accounting software, get your bookkeeping up to date for your accounting software, reconcile it up to date. Because no way the accountant's going to write this letter for you without looking at your numbers. There might be some accountants out there, but I don't do that. I would look at your numbers just to check if there's a 30% drop in income. So if you don't get your bookkeeping up to date, I'm not going to write that letter for you. So make sure that you can prove to the accountant that there has been a 30% drop in income. And the only way you can do that is update your bookkeeping and make sure that you have your bank statements ready to send over to them as well, so they can double check your accounting software matches with your bank statements as well. So that's really important, these two here. Next thing is, if you're not GST registered, register for GST, because if you're GST registered, then they can tell that you're over 75K, and make sure your BAS is up to date as well. So these things here, this is like not 100%. I'm not certain that they will check this because GST registration and BAS is with the federal government, but you might as well get it done because this grant is actually, ScoMo is actually getting involved with this grant. He's providing 50% of the money for the grant. So he might ask that this is a requirement. So we might as well get this done if you aren't. I do have a question from Hassan. What about if I have two branches, one in ACT and one in Sydney? You can apply for New South Wales one, but you can't apply for the ACT one, unfortunately. Yeah, so that's how it works. Cool. So the next one is speak to your accountant. If you're with me and you're working with me, send me a message or shoot me an email and I'll include you on the list, and we're going to update our clients as we go. I'm going to try to keep the cost as cheap as possible. So it'll be $1,000 each letter. No, I'm just joking. It won't be $1,000, but I'm going to try to keep the cost low as possible. So I'm going to do a walkthrough on how to apply. And also I'm going to provide, quickly try to smash out all the accountant letters if it's necessary. So I'm not 100% sure that we may need, we will need an accountant letter, but to me, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense that the Service New South Wales would know that you're over 75K, that you have a 30% drop, and they'd rather push the blame onto someone. So if something happens, they lose their license. So I'm not going to be signing off any letters if some accountants might, but I won't be signing off any letters unless I check that you have a 30% drop in income compared to the period that we're comparing to. So whether it's 2019 or any other period if you started your business earlier. So they are the things I would look into, and I want you guys to check. There's no more here, but if anyone has any more questions, put them down. But one thing I need you guys to confirm is that this process does take a bit of time. We've went through applications with Service New South Wales. They're understaffed. They don't have as many people. So the funny thing about this whole situation is that when you apply for these grants, is that some of these people that are working with Service New South Wales, some of them are quick and some of them are slow. So we've had some clients that applied last year. We've given them the same information as opposed to another client, similar situation completely, the drop of income, but one took 4 weeks and one took 1 week. So it's like a drop of a hat, or on what's going to happen. We don't really know. Some of them will be passed, the grant will be passed faster. Some of them will take a bit longer, but our goal is to make it as quick as possible. So they don't ask too many questions. So make sure you get your Service New South Wales profile up, make sure you get your bookkeeping up to date, make sure you check and register for GST registration and do your BASIS, and speak to your accountant and provide accountants, get them to make sure that provide accountants there. I've seen cases where you just show the business activity statements, the drop in income, but in this case, it's a 2-week period, so they may ask for more, the accountants later. So let's see if there's any other questions. Right, even if the company is registered in ACT. Yeah, if the company is registered in ACT, it most likely would not apply. Like what they do in Service New South Wales is they check the ABN, and they check the ABN location, because in Service you can actually check on ABR where the company is located, in which state. If the company is located in ACT, then most likely you won't be able to apply, because they can do that check really easily. Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, look, if you have 2 branches, you can apply for the New South Wales branch, yeah. But look, just check your ABN. If the ABN says, if you do go on abr.gov.au and you search your ABN, if the postcode says ACT, then you're probably gonna have some issues. Cool, all right. Any other questions, guys? I think that's really it. We've covered it all in 40 minutes. Yeah, so if you guys want to stay, you can stay, but you can ask any more other questions. If you want to talk about life, don't talk to me about it. I'll find someone to talk to you. I have a psychologist clients I can refer to you. Yeah, so I just want you guys to know that it's been very, very heartwarming that clients have been waiting for me and to respond. I've been taking a lot more longer than usual. So I really appreciate that clients are understanding that it's a really busy time for me. But yeah, thank you very much, guys, for joining this webinar and then leaving me to explain everything and waiting to the webinar instead of just bombarding me and making a lot of phone calls. But yeah, like I said, there will be a resource page uploaded on our website probably by the end of this weekend. And that's going to go through this COVID-19 grants and the New South Wales grants, as well as the other states as well. Cool. All right. So I'll chat to you guys soon.